Alright guys, one of the key issues that I've noticed how some of you guys can't seem to get fourth, fifth, and sixth gear, or you can only get reverse, first and second, or you can only get fourth, fifth, and sixth, but you can't get to reverse. A lot of that has to do with cable adjustments. Now, there are multiple adjustments you can make. You have the cable rod ends. Okay, in this case, this is at the gearbox. This goes onto the gear shift mechanism at the gearbox on the transmission. And the other end of the spectrum is at the shifter. Right now, we're going to focus on this particular area first. As you can see, we have it on the bench. The reason why we have it on the bench today is because we need to preset the preload or work on the tension of the cables prior to installation. One of the reasons why you can't seem to find fourth, fifth, and sixth, or can't find reverse through third gear is because, again, you either have too much tension or not enough tension on the shifter with the sheath. The cable on the inside has to have some amount of tension on it to allow for smooth action and for the full range of the shifter. What I like to do prior to installing these things on the car is I put this on the bench, and I like to preset this turnbuckle here to a certain amount of threads. One thing that I like to do, as provided with the kit, is you have this little boot right here. What's nice about this little boot is it kind of gives you an idea of how much you should turn this guy outward. And normally what I like to do is I like to preset it in this position. Again, as you can see, there's a taper. So I go up to the taper initially, and that's where I set it. I then take the jam nut, bring it out, and gently snug it. My goal here is to make sure I have roughly 10 to 12 threads exposed behind the jam nut. And this will get you to roughly where you need to be in order to have the proper amount of tension in the cables to correct the shifting actions that some of you guys may be experiencing with the installation of our kit. You need to focus on the Heim joint next. There is 18 to 19 total turns to be able to bottom this out. And normally where we like to set these guys is about midway. So roughly 8 to 9 total turns in from full out. What I mean by full turns, I mean that's a half turn, that's a full turn, that equals 1. Once you're there, you can lock them down. And don't be too afraid or worried about the fact that when you go to put it in the car, it may be sideways like this or like this. It's not a big deal. There's plenty of room in the cable itself to compensate for that twist. Worst case scenario, if you're really off and you're really having to tweak it, then you can loosen the jam nut to relieve the tension, relock it down, and throw it in. There's plenty of movement in the Heim joint to allow for correction if needed. Once you're done there, the rest of the adjustments can be made at the shifter on the rod end at the shifter side. If you run out of adjustments, then you would come back to the gearbox side, make your adjustments here to kind of allow for the full range that you're looking for. And again, if you find that you don't have the range that you need, you're bottoming out, you're not able to get to reverse, or you're not able to get to sixth gear smoothly, then you would make another adjustment at the turnbuckle here and do everything accordingly. Alright guys, what we have here is the crossgate mechanism with the kit. As you can see, there's a lot of pieces to it. This is the most recent iteration of the kit. So what I'm going to show you here is effectively presetting this mechanism prior to going on to the shifter base inside the car, as you have to build this together in the car. You can't just pre-build it and then throw it in and you're done. So you want to try and avoid having to redo things that you could have avoided getting done beforehand. So one of the things that you'll notice is right here, this little piece right here is a reverse lockout gate. And this gate is very similar to, or does the same job that the original shifter did, either the old style or the updated style that Lotus made. What you have to do is you have to have the acorn nut set to a position where it allows the arm to pivot rearward low enough to get into first and second gear. Where I like to preset the gate is I like to back out this bolt and basically line up the stud with the peak of the gate. And the reason for that is because now we come out to the reverse lockout cable that is a part of the shifter. What happens, you have to pass this ball and spring through, okay, pull this gate out and capture the ball, ideally without the spring, in that little socket that's been machined. So the point of the spring is to keep tension on the gate from it flopping over. And just wind it in, just nice and snug. You don't even have to put a wrench on it. And then pull back the slop, and there you have it. The goal here, when setting it up on the car and when you're 100% done and you make adjustments to the sheath, is when you lift on the collar underneath the shift knob, you're only opening so much, because then the round head on the 8-core nut is going to do the rest by pushing up against the gate and opening up the rest and allowing you to go into reverse. It's more of a thing to feel, so you know that you're basically in position, ready to go into reverse, as opposed to accidentally going into reverse and not realizing, thinking you're going into second gear. So again, you're going over 90 degrees, okay? You're keeping the ball in the socket and keeping tension on the gate using this spring, and by bottoming this guy out as far down as it'll go. Again, not necessary to put a wrench on it. Once you're in position and you're happy with it, then you lock this guy down, and then as well as the gate, normally I like to back it out to where I have roughly a couple millimeter gap, so that way, again, when I go into first gear, then I have third gear, and finally I have fifth gear. From there, just bring this guy down and cinch him down. Again, what you're going to see with these guys, for the most part, aside from this bolt right here, it's all standard SAE hardware, so you're going to use standard American wrenches and sockets, again, aside from the parts that connect to the rest of the car, which are then metric. we've gotten to the point now where everything is installed. We have the base in place, we have the handbrake brackets in place. Inside we have, or at the bottom of the car passing through the floor, we have the shifter reinforcer plate. So all that's left now is to install and to set the crossgate. We've already got an idea of what gear. Technically we're in neutral in the transmission, so this should be fourth gear and third gear. So now what we have to do is to make the adjustments on the crossgate cable for the crossgate, so that way we're in the correct location, and depending on what gate we're trying to go, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or even in reverse. Problem is, if you didn't put the slack properly, or didn't set the slack properly, excuse me, in the crossgate cable, you're going to run into the potential issue of not being able to find any specific gears, depending on whether it's too loose or too tight. One little trick that I like to do is I like to put pressure up against the crossgate cable going in. What this does is it goes into the gearbox and it pushes the crossgate in the gearbox over to the factory, or to the gearbox's own shifter reverse lockout system that's in it. You go to push it in to reverse, you feel that little detent kind of pop in. So that's a reverse lockout that's built into the C60 gearbox that's found in the Lotus Elise and the Lotus Exige. So we can take advantage of that by pushing in on the cable end until we feel that stop. Once we feel that stop, if you push hard, which you have to really push hard, now you hear the pop. That's now in the reverse gate, and I can then move the shifter to go into reverse and select reverse itself. So again, the intention here is to find that reverse lockout in the transmission. And as we do that, okay, I'm now at it. If I push any harder, I will get into reverse. Otherwise, now where I'm at, I should be able to line up this hole with this rod end by going in, trying to go into the reverse section. Right now, I have the reverse lockout at the shifter stopping me from going any further. Okay, so by matching up the reverse lockout in the transmission and the reverse lockout in the shifter, okay, we'll be able to line these guys up and roughly be where we need to be crossgate wise to be able to get into all gears, including reverse. So clearly, with me hitting the reverse lockout in the transmission and me being in the neutral position, which by the way, the shifter is slight right to the center point line of the handbrake on the Elise Exige. So if you're perfectly lined up with the handle, you're not going to get all gears. You should be slight right. As you're slight right, you'll notice the crossgate position is in a different location compared to where it wants to be, because of the spring action that you have here that's forcing it to bring it back and recenter it. So you guys, again, S2s with the 2ZZ and the C60 gearbox, you're going to be slight right, okay? And that's roughly where it's going to settle once you're done and lined up with everything. So with that, let's make some quick adjustments. So like I said earlier, at the gearbox side, we try to keep the rod end somewhere between 8 to 9 turns. It's okay if you go more than 8 to 9. Let's say you end up with 10 or 12 or even 13 turns. It's not the end of the world. Again, there's a lot of play, a lot of adjustments, so adjust accordingly. The idea is to basically feel like you're just smooth gearing. Every single gear nice and smooth. If it feels kind of crunchy or rough, doesn't feel like it's engaging smoothly, obviously again, car's running, car's warmed up, clutch is being used, then again there's some fine tuning that you're going to make, primarily with the crossgate. If you make adjustments and no matter what, at the end of the day, you just cannot get that smooth feel, then you're probably going to have to make some adjustments at the gearbox side, again with the rod end adjustments. Finally, you'll be left with making adjustments to the sheath on the crossgate to either tighten or loosen to allow for that range of motion. If at the end of the day you can't get anything smooth, no matter what you do, okay, then you may potentially have a gearbox issue. That doesn't mean that you actually have it. Again, there's a lot of fine tuning. You just got to be patient, take your time, and I'm talking fine tuning like a half turn, reinstall, test drive, a half turn. And same thing with the adjuster for the sheath. To take away or to increase slack, a half turn, quarter turn, try it. That is how fine tuned these shifters can be. And that also is the case for you Evora guys. A lot of fine tuning. But man, let me tell you, once you nail it, you nail it. So now we're pretty much bottomed out. Let's line it up. We're pushing in. We now feel the reverse lockout set onto the gearbox side. Moving over. Now I've got a lot to play. So one thing that I can do is, knowing full well that I need to be on this side in the neutral position, what I can do is I can make the adjustments by removing tension on this nut right here and bringing down the acorn nut for the reverse lockout on the base. Now, by shifting over, I effectively hit that mark. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this guy over, hit that mark, and again, I'm still quite a bit off. So, from here, I want to go ahead and maybe give it another half a turn. Again, get it in position, bring in. I feel the tension on the reverse lockout on the gearbox, reverse lockout here. We're pretty close. So one thing I'm not a big fan of is this guy being hyperextended. If I'm having to really move this guy down quite a bit, then basically I'm kind of at the end of my adjustment here. I mean, I can keep going and keep trying to get it, but I'm going to be chasing my tail later on in fifth, sixth, and fourth, fifth, and sixth gears. So this means that I have to make an adjustment to the sheath on the gearbox side. So that's what I mean. You have to make multiple adjustments, multiple changes to get it just right. Be patient, take your time, don't rush it, and make sure to always test it.